Hi guys. Now we're going to talk about the chapter on stress, chapter 11 in our general psych course. Starting out, we're going to try to follow along with the PowerPoint slides. If you can play the audio of the video and open up your slides as I'm talking about some of them, then it'll probably make it make a little more sense. I'm just going to hit the highlights. So make sure you read the chapter and you even drill down more on any of the slides that I kind of skipped through. With the chapter on stress, what we're focusing on is the big picture. The dangers of stress, how common is stress, the types of stress, how certain personality traits contribute to stress. So the general definition is that stress is a negative emotional state. I'll stop there. Negative emotional state meaning that it's perceived as something not good, but you also need to know that there is a little bit of stress that's considered positive. It's called eustress, and eustress is when you have enough stress to motivate you to reach your goals. If you didn't have any stress in the whole wide world, one, that would be odd, because even people that have lots of money or are retired or don't have a lot of problems, they still have stress. So everybody perceives stress in some situations. However, you need a little bit of stress to help you motivate yourself to get things done. Like if you weren't stressed about your grades, then you probably let them slip and make all D's and F's and not care at all. If you weren't stressed about your bills, then you wouldn't go to work. If you weren't stressed about your health, you might not do things that would motivate you to exercise or eat better. So in perspective, stress can be a positive thing, but the general definition is that it's a negative state occurring in response to events, and then the next big word is perceived as taxing. Perceived. Perception plays a big part in stress. And like with emotions, your perception makes it real for you. So if you perceive something to be stressful and somebody else says that's not stressful, they don't get to define that for you. Stress is stress if you see it as stressful. So one person might see an aging, ill parent as a stressful event. Another person might not. Some people might see their refrigerator breaking as the most stressful thing that could happen. Other people would not. But I think the main thing to do when you're dealing with somebody else or your own stress is validate it. It might be exaggerated to you, or it might not be something that you're stressful about. But when you perceive something as stressful, then you react to it physiologically. And that's what we're going to drill down to. So you perceive it, it's negative. And lastly, what really makes it stress is it exceeds your ability to cope. So it feels like, especially stress that is harmful, that you can feel helpless or hopeless. You feel like there's no end to it. You feel like it drains you. It feels like you have no skills to take care of it. You're in a situation where you don't have those coping mechanisms. So we're going to talk about coping mechanisms a little bit as well. So what we're talking about is health psychology, combining psychology with the health field. And one of the ways we do that is talk about something called psychoimmunology. Psycho meaning the self and thoughts in your individual emotional state, immune system, how it affects that, and the study of that. So it's biology and psychology intertwined once again. So a lot of health psychologists or nurses that have a psychology background and a health background, what the goal of health psychology is to treat somebody and their illness or disease or problem with a psychological remedy and a biological physical remedy, even though those things are intertwined. For example, when dealing with health issues and Western philosophy or Western culture, if you will, like the United States and Western Europe, we're not as good at seeing this holistic approach to wellness as Eastern cultures like Africa, India, and Asian. But what it means is when somebody has an illness, you treat that illness on a psychological, social, emotional level, and on a physical level. So I always like to use my example of my sister-in-law who now maybe 20 years ago was diagnosed with breast cancer. And yes, she went to the doctor. She had the best medical treatment you could have. MD Anderson, had chemotherapy, radiation, took the medication. However, she also took care of the other side of her, which was she stopped drinking and smoking. She started exercising regularly. Through this process, she got therapy. She got out of a negative relationship, out of a bad job, got massage, took care of herself psychologically. So in a year after she was diagnosed, she was healed, cured, and because she dealt with the physical aspects, but also didn't ignore the stressful part of her life, or the emotional, spiritual, psychological part, I truly believe, and medical science believes that created more healing and a lack of remission. So it's taking care of the whole person, not just a pill to fix a disease, but the source of the problem, which is often stress. I also want to talk about, just for a second, I hope you remember when we talked about in the chapter on biology or neuropsychology, remember that fight or flight system? This comes back into play. This is where we talk about the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. If you remember, the sympathetic nervous system revs up the psychological body, right? The body physiologically. I'm sorry, not psychologically. The sympathetic nervous system revs up the body physiologically. The parasympathetic nervous system calms the body down. When somebody's in a constant state of stress, just think back to all those physical things that are happening when the sympathetic nervous system, revs up the body. Heart rate, high blood pressure, you breathe faster, your pupils dilate, you sweat more, all those things, muscles, the blood that usually has your internal organs on a steady balance goes more towards your muscles and your extremities, so you can be stronger, fight or flight. So stress is a perceived threat. And when your body is responding to that, you're putting physical wear and tear on the body, making it more difficult, which is so important. One, to fight just regular illnesses and disease. When your body is physically fighting stress, you're more susceptible to illness and bacteria and viral infection in your environment. So short term might be, oh man, my body's been trying to fight this stress, now I can't fight a common cold. Long term effect can be more dangerous, like heart disease and high blood pressure that can cause things like heart attacks, strokes. When you have your body constantly fighting short-term stress, you deplete your immune system, and that can make you more susceptible to things like cancer. So short-term could be headaches, stomach aches, muscle aches, tired, those types of symptoms, because your body's fighting the stress as if it was a tiger. Long-term problems are depleted immune system, autoimmune deficiency issues, heart problems, heart attack, stroke, cancer, the leading causes of death. Stress is connected to our bodies physically. We can't get rid of stress, but you can try to implement coping mechanisms to deal with stress so that you're not doing damage to your body beyond what's necessary. All right, so that's really the big picture. The slides talk about the different types of stress. You have daily hassles. Daily hassles are, I got a hole in my t-shirt when I tried to put it on. I went out the door and I gotta go change my t-shirt. Or you get to school and somebody cuts you off in traffic and you don't have a place to park. Or your alarm doesn't go off. Or your kids are fighting that morning and it's causing just daily little nitpicky things. Then you have what's called big stress events, and these are life-changing events like weddings and funerals and moving and graduating and starting school and starting a job and ending a job. There is a survey you can take, or a little form, and it's called the Social Readjustment Rating Scale. And you can, you go through the scale if you want to, and there's a number for each event, and then you add up the total number at the end, and the higher the number, the more likely you're susceptible to illness and disease because your stress level is so high. You may or may not want to take it because there's things on there that's perceived as good. Christmas, that's good. Weddings, that should be good. But major life changes, when your life changes drastically, and a lot of us have experienced that lately, then your stress levels are at their highest. So be extra careful. All right, and I'm gonna tell you some things to do. Then you can go even above the big life changes section to traumatic experiences. And hopefully we'll talk a little bit about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, in the last chapter, but that's when stress causes serious psychological damage. All right, so what I want to do now is just kind of have you skip to the section on the endocrine system, because I'm talking about the mind-body connection. But the endocrine system is the pathways of stress. So stress hormones, particularly things like cortisol, travel like neurotransmitters sending messages throughout the body. When you have short-term stress, it triggers the sympathetic nervous system. Like I said before, it switches that fight or flight response on, and it affects things like increased respiration. You breathe more rapidly, increased heart rate, temporary increase in blood pressure. If you've ever been very nervous going to the doctor, they take your blood pressure, you probably have a little bit higher than your normal blood pressure level. Increased blood flow to the muscles, like I said before, so you can fight or flight that tiger. But this is not a tiger. The stress can be any sorts of psychological things, or it could be a physical threat. Digestion is inhibited. Oh my gosh, people, digestion and stress go hand in hand. So there's so many people that deal with digestive issues, diarrhea, constipation, stomach ulcers, problems, ulcers in the mouth, any system, the digestive system, any part of it can be affected by the chemicals that are released by these hormones, by these cortisol hormones. Sorry, I'm kind of bumbling over my words. So these cortisol hormones release an acid, and that acid can cause ulcers, or that acid can affect your digestive system. So usually when, a lot of times when somebody has perpetual eating or digestive issues, stress is one of the places you should look to try to address the problem. Then you have like your pupils are dilated. Okay, so the second pathway is prolonged stress, when the stress doesn't go away. Most of us can handle short-term emergencies, short-term issues, short-term high levels of stress. Finals week, you can do this. Exercise, eat well, try to get good sleep, manage your time, reach out, ask people for help. But when that short-term stressful situation doesn't go away, like an extremely stressful job or stressful relationships, things like losing your job and not being able to pay your bills. This is more what we consider prolonged stress. That's when it takes a different pathway and it starts to kind of cut into your stored energy. So your stored energy resources start becoming depleted. Inflammation starts to be an issue, and it reduces your immune system response. And that can be what can potentially be dangerous. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is a couple things, control. So one of the things that helps reduce the perception of stress is when an individual has some sense of control over their own life. And this is a complicated one, especially when I'm talking to my younger college students, because sometimes you don't have the option of having a lot of control in your life. But I kind of present it as make it a goal to find a lifestyle, a career, an environment that you have some sense of control over. Because the more control you have, the less your body perceives your environment as stressful. What do I mean? I mean a job where you have flexibility. It doesn't matter how hard the job is. It doesn't even matter how dangerous the job potentially is. But jobs that are more stressful tend to have more micromanaging, more you can and can't do things, as opposed to you get to make decisions about how you do your job, what time you do your job, flexibility within the job. Those things can be help greatly reduce stress. What about your home life? How you want to live in a home, how you keep your home, how loud you play your music, what you dress like. I know that since I've had a college student in our family come back and forth from her apartment and college life back to her family life is very stressful for her. And one of the reasons is she had a lot of flexibility and control when she was off at school. Even though she still had stress of school and a job and an internship and all that stuff. But coming back home has been harder for her. And I realize it's because we go back into family mode. My husband and I are in charge. We set the rules. We have restrictions. We tell her what to do. And she's had that ability to make those own decisions and be more of an adult on her own. And coming back has been just an adjustment because she loses that control. And it makes a big difference. All right, so they've done studies on personal control, and they found that one of a really big, interesting study to me, because my dad is in an assisted living facility, is that the more personal control residents had in their nursing home, assisted living facilities, they tended to be healthier in general. So if they were able to make choices about when they ate and choices of what they eat and being able to come and go as they want to, pick activities if they wanted to do them or not, decorate the room the way they wanted to that is personal to them. If they were able to make basic choices and they had high control, they were healthier than the people in the study that had low control, which didn't get to decide when and what they ate. They didn't get any control over their environment or their activities, those kinds of things. So I think that's kind of interesting to think about as far as elderly. Then we have something that's called explanatory style. And it has a lot to do with how you see life. So this is kind of how stress and personality come together. And some of these personality traits, I believe, are probably pretty genetic, but not that the environment doesn't affect your personality as well. So you have two types. And I think that if you struggle with some of this, these are things that you could probably personally try to work on. Optimistic explanatory style versus pessimistic explanatory style. So the optimistic explanatory style, these are people that when bad things happen, they don't take it so personal. They make it more of an external explanation. And what I mean by that is not that you don't always blame somebody else for your mistakes or your down times, but that it's not always your fault either. So pessimistic person internalizes things a little bit differently than a optimistic person. So optimistic person would, okay, so you're at a club, you're looking at somebody, you're like, hey, they look at you, they go, and you're like, oh. How are you going to explain that situation? If you're optimistic, you're going to say, maybe they need glasses and they couldn't see how cute I was from across the room. Or maybe they just, they're in a bad mood, or maybe something about them. I don't know. It doesn't have to be about you always. I think a lot of times when we're younger, we think every bad thing has to do with you. Every issue somebody in your family is having, it has to be about you. Guess what? It doesn't. Sometimes people go through their own things and you have nothing to do with it. So you don't have to internalize it. But a pessimistic person is going to say, oh, they don't like me because my hair, or I'm too fat, or I'm ugly. You don't know that. So external versus internal. The other one is unstable versus stable. When somebody is optimistic and they have less stress, they see a bad situation as unstable, meaning it might suck right now, but it doesn't mean it's going to be this way forever. And it doesn't mean it's always been this way. They try to say, this is bad right now. This is not great. This is just stressful. This is taking, a lot of my energy. But it doesn't always have to be that way. But somebody who's pessimistic say, this is bad and it's always going to be bad and God just doesn't like me and everything bad always happens to me. Everything always. Those terms, stay away from that. Just makes you perceive stress differently. And then lastly, specific versus global. When somebody has a specific explanation for stress, you can say, you can let it affect that part of your life without affecting everything in your life. This is so hard to do. I see it kind of like as a pie. So if you're stressed at work, well, maybe that piece of pie isn't great, but it doesn't have to spoil your whole entire pie. your relationships, your health, your family, your friends, your work. One thing doesn't have to spoil the whole pie. This piece of the pie can be struggling without it ruining relationships and situations outside of that piece. Keep it in the piece. Because somebody with a global explanation say, one thing sucks, everything sucks. And they just choose to see the world that way. It's a choice. It's a perception. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about real quickly is type A versus type B personality traits. I think this is just, I don't know why I think this is kind of funny, but y'all know me, I think weird things are funny. These are other individual personality factors that can influence how you respond to stress. And there's some debate about how cut and dry these two personality types are, but I think they're kind of funny. Type A personality versus type B. Type A personality is in this situation considered a more dangerous, more at-risk personality trait. So this is good news. If these are things that you identify with, then change them about yourself. You can change these things because they're not healthy. Okay, so type A personality has 3 factors, and it contributes to, in the big picture, high blood pressure, increased heart rate, and is highly associated with heart disease. Now, I don't want you going around labeling everybody, you're type A, you're type B, but here's type A. 3 things. Number 1, exaggerated sense of time urgency. Type A people, no matter what, are always in a hurry. We got to get there. We got to do this. We got to go. We got to go. Even if it's a situation where you're just going for a walk, even if it's a situation where you have all the time in the world, vacation, do we really have to get up at 6 a.m.? Are we really burning daylight? It's that mentality of everything's in a rush, everything's in a hurry. When they're driving, when they're at the store, gotta go, gotta go. That's a type A trait. Number 2, high competition personality. Sometimes they're considered type A, and competition has a time and place. No doubt competitors are valued in certain sport-like activities, but a highly competitive person can turn anything into a competition, even competitions that don't need to occur. Like somebody else has something, you have to have something better. Somebody else is, checking out at the Target line, I'm going to have to get in front of them. It's a kind of this thing that you have to be better, or you're trying to compete, and competition defines you. And so this can be bad, especially in relationships, where if you're highly competitive, then there has to be a winner and a loser. And that's never good in a relationship. One of the things that Stephen Covey says, who is an expert on human relationships and success, is when you're in a relationship, you should always strive for the win-win, not the win-lose. And the win-win's a little bit harder, but it's when both people can maintain their integrity and their dignity and find solutions and compromise in an argument. And then the third thing, which is actually the most dangerous thing, is hostility. Hostility personality trait is something that, if this is something you identify with, then maybe talking to somebody about it, or practicing meditation, or reading about how to lower your hostility would be a good idea. Hostility people just get mad so fast about little things, about unimportant things. And it's like, road rage, or, oh, that person brought me the wrong drink, and you could see their little veins pop out and their faces get red. It's just, one of the things that I don't know why I think this is funny, but some of the people that I know that are high in hostility, they like to point out when other people are idiots all the time. He's an idiot, she's an idiot. But you just see them tense up when they get so upset about something. Now, it's not that you shouldn't have belief systems and stand up for what you believe in, but when somebody gets hostile that fast, that often, all they're doing is putting unnecessary wear and tear on their heart and their body, making them more susceptible to illness and disease. So, if you find yourself in any of those traits, try to change it. You're in control of your thoughts. And so you're able to find tools and techniques to lower those hostility levels. That would be a good idea. All right, the last thing I want to talk about is something called coping. And I'm just going to kind of briefly go over some of these techniques. Now, most of you know, I ask my students a lot, what do you do to cope? Take a nap. Okay. Taking a nap is something, but it's not the most effective way to deal with real life stress. You got to sometimes face it. But if you're healthy, you can face so much more than you realize you can and get out of it with the least amount of damage to your body as possible. Let's play Family Feud. The top 5 things that you can do to help your body perceive and reduce stress is number 1, physical exercise. This doesn't mean an expensive gym membership, even though that can happen and you can work out and that can motivate you. But this could be walking, this could be dancing, swimming, playing outside with the dog, physical activity where you get that heart rate up about 15 to 20 minutes a day. Moving helps reduce stress. And not because those things are fun, because it literally produces a chemical in your brain that counteracts the cortisol and helps your brain balance out that stress level. Number 2, eating well. Certain foods contribute to stress. When your body is healthier, and you just look it up. Look up foods that help reduce stress. Alcohol is not one of them. Alcohol can numb emotions, but it doesn't fix the problem, and it doesn't make you healthy enough to be able to tackle the issues. So certain foods, like you would imagine, fruits and vegetables, stay away from fast food, processed foods. Those things are so bad on you on so many levels, but it also affects the way you deal with stress, as it affects your brain. Other things you can do is get good sleep. Try to sleep during sleeping hours, and getting at least 8 hours of sleep a night is ideal, and getting it all at the same time is ideal as well. Number 4, social support. I don't know who needs to hear this, but sometimes you have to ask for help. And asking for help, depending on its emotional help, hey, I need somebody to listen to me and get this off my chest, or it is literal help where, hey, listen, I need somebody to pick up my mom from the doctor for me tomorrow. I'm in a meeting. But asking for help can be a huge source of reducing stress. Some other things that the book talks about are different studies of stress, like animals can help reduce stress in nursing homes, but also in lives of people that, depend on their animals to cheer them up and give them that unconditional love. Staying organized can help reduce stress, and sometimes changing your perception of a situation. Trying to see the good in the most stressful times of your life can help you kind of keep that mindset from going into that negative spiral, to say, well, I'm grateful for this. Just pick things you're grateful for. Look around and find things every day in your life to help you cope and be positive about something that's going on. Few other things is, if you're going to keep a gratitude journal, I think that's great. Also, just writing down your thoughts in a journal can be very therapeutic and help you reduce stress. Other things you can do is do something creative or fun or that brings you joy. So find music that you love to play, find TV shows and movies that make you laugh. Laughing not only reduces stress, but it also has been shown in a lot of scientific studies that it actually contributes to healing. So I'm hoping that all my students are implementing things in their life that help them reduce stress. Stress is coming. It comes in waves. But if you're healthy and you have your mind in the right place, sometimes we can predict when stress is coming, so we stay healthy so that we can fight it when it happens. And sometimes it hits us out of nowhere and we have to rev up our coping skills. But nobody else can reduce stress in your life like you can, and that is by implementing coping mechanisms. Because once you have coping mechanisms, then you either won't perceive it as stress anymore, or the stress that you have to deal with, you can deal with it in a healthier way. Thank you for watching.